Hi, my name is Bob Kintz with Call One, and in collaboration with the Suburban Purchasing Co-op, wanted to cover some of the changes in the industry that have caused an increase in pricing for some legacy telecommunication services. The agenda for today will be the industry changes, reasons for the rate increases. I want to cover a couple technology options that are available for your public switch telephone connections, telephone network. And if you have any questions or comments, if you'd like to contact me, feel free to call or email me at the information shown on the screen. This will also be at the end of the presentation as well. I'm going to focus mainly on AT&T services, although this would apply to the other carriers as well. The majority of our customers are in AT&T territories in Illinois. And what we've seen is looking at just even on the internet, if you Google POTS lines and AT&T, you'll find that AT&T is trying to get out of the last mile equipment. And they are petitioning the AT&T to, as it says here, hang up on the carrier's landline network. And they want to focus on the more profitable wireless services. They've also even gone so far as to identify some of the carriers that might be interested in picking up the legacy services that are delivered on the copper lines. Windstream, Frontier, CenturyLink, Fairpoint are just a couple of them that might do this. Frontier's actually picked up a lot of the central Illinois region, and so they're already looking to play in that market space. This is kind of an interesting article because what this talks about is what it actually explains why the increases are going up on these legacy services on the last mile that's delivered by copper. Many of the enterprise organizations or the medium businesses have already adapted the new technologies and have moved off of these legacy services. Well, the carriers still have a fixed cost to maintain that equipment, maintain the copper that's in the ground, and deliver those services to the people that are still on the legacy network. Well, if there's less people but their costs are still high, the only thing they can really do to remain profitable is to raise up the rates on these services. And the legacy services that I'm referring to are POTS lines, plain old telephone service, Centrex, point-to-point data circuits such as T1s, point-to-point analog circuits for radios and for alarm services. So really this is a basic layout of the carrier services that I'm talking about. And which portion are we focused on? We're focused on the copper lines that are serving what we refer to as the last mile. And the last mile is from the AT&T central office to your location. And these are typically plugged into your phone system. They're the internet services that you have in place that are connected to your data network. So this is where we're going to focus on. The incumbent local exchange carriers, or the ILECs, such as AT&T or Verizon, they have an attitude that applies to many of their copper services. Their T1s are the data connections that historically have been used to tie two locations together. They also have DS3, which equals 28 T1s that were prevalent in the industry. The low-baud circuits that you use for analog circuits for modems, whether it be for an alarm service, water treatment for the lift stations, that's what you use those. Centrex is a feature pack that is an overlay on POTS service, and POTS service, of course, is just a plain old telephone service. These would be the lines that you have that are into your phone system, that are going to your elevators, that you're using as just like single line locations. Okay, so what are the ILECs doing? Well, they really don't want to have you on those services. They're trying to move towards higher end services that are much more profitable for them, much easier to maintain. How are they going to get you off of these? Well, It's been very cost effective for many years, but if you're happy with the cost and the service that's delivered, you're really not going to make a change. So they're going to force it. We have seen on T1s over a 20% increase from 2012 to 2013, and a lot of that increase is in the mileage on the T1s. There's a little bit of an increase on the local loop. That would be from the central office to your location, but the mileage took a big increase, and that would be between central offices. The DS3, basically, that was the 28 T1s. They priced it out of the market. Fiber services are much more price competitive than a DS3, which is the 28 T1s bundled. The low baud services has been a very sore point in regards to the budget for many of the municipalities and businesses, because there's been over an 80% increase since the beginning of 2012. Actually, in the last year and a half, it's probably been close to 100% increase on the low baud services that you're using for alarm circuits, that you're using for the water treatment plants, that you're using for radio towers. As I mentioned, they're also increasing the services on Centrex and then POTS lines as well, which is the delivery for Centrex. And in this diagram, since January 2007, when POTS lines were $17 at tariff, today, as of January 1st, they are now $37 per line. Now, this is the tariff rate, so hopefully you're not paying $37 per line. If you are, definitely get in touch with me. But so you can see the increases. They're trying to increase the monthly bill that's received to make some of the other technologies much more palatable and move them off of the copper-based services that have a high repair cost for the ILECs. So what are some of the technology options that you can use to replace these services? Well, they involve the convergence of voice and data across the same transport. The first service is an ISDN PRI, which is 23 paths for inbound and outbound calls. This is a technology that's actually been around for a while, and it's one of the few copper services that's actually still continued to decrease in price. In the last year and a half, 2 years, it's decreased greatly, so that there is a much better ROI for replacing your POTS services and your other legacy transport services that you have in place. The second technology option would be a dynamic IP, where basically they're combining voice and data and your internet services across the same transport. By doing this, this is more efficient use of the transport, which could lower your costs. The voice is converted into data packets and sent across the transport with your data and your internet services, and there are some things that you need to do to make sure that the voice quality is still there. The third one that I have listed is SIP trunks, and this is basically voice being, again, packetized into data packets, and this can be delivered over dedicated transport, or it can be coming over the public internet. And then the last option I wanted to touch on very briefly would be the hosted IP, and this would be moving your telephone services into the cloud. So the first solution was the PRI, and basically what this does is it allows you to take multiple POTS lines, convert them onto a single type of service that's much more effective than having dedicated POTS lines throughout the location. And so the PRI is from your phone system to the AT&T central office, which is again connected to the outside world for making and receiving phone calls. Again, this is a technology that's been around for a while, very proven, very solid, and has decreased in price over the last couple years. Usually, if you're looking at about 10 to 12 POTS lines in your phone system today, the cost justification for the PRI is there, including the equipment upgrade if your phone system's capable, and often you have an ROI of maybe 6 to 8 months depending on how many POTS lines you have into the system. The second option that I was talking about was the dynamic IP option. And you can see the difference here is that I've actually shown the connectivity between the AT&T central office and your location is actually packetized voice into data. So it's SIP, or Voice over IP, or VoIP, which is a buzzword that everybody's been hearing lately in our industry. What it does is it sends the voice and the internet, the data services, across the same transport port from the AT&T central office, puts it into a black box I have labeled as an IAD, Integrated Access Device. We're loaded with acronyms. And what this box does is it converts it into traditional legacy telephony connections. As you can see, I've got it labeled as PRI going into the phone system, which is what it's used to seeing. It also can convert it into POTS lines. So really, we could do it both ways without having to upgrade, doing any equipment changes to your phone system. You can be delivering dynamic IP to your location. The third services would be to do what we would refer to as a straight SIP trunk. Again, it's voice, it's data packetized, sent across the transport. We can deliver this into our black box, and then we can break this out into traditional POTS lines. We can also break it out into a PRI and emulate that. And it plugs right into your phone system, or it can even plug right into a telephone if you've got a single line phone for some applications. If it's a remote location that you just have one phone sitting at, we can deliver it across the internet to that location. Very cost effective. There's a lot that you can do in regards to services that are delivered in this type of environment. The fourth option that we talked about was SIP trunks, and this is in a pure form. Again, voice is packetized into data, sent across the same transport. But in this situation, we have an IP PBX, or a VoIP PBX, or VoIP system as it's often referred to, that terminates directly into your IP system. We no longer need this black box to do the conversion into legacy connectivity. So it's going right into your IP system. The voice is delivered across your data network as voice over IP to the desktop. So this is something that is done commonly as well. Now, all four of these applications are based upon your phone system being at your location. It's based on it being customer-based. The last option that I was referring to was a hosted IP solution. And this is based on the phone system located in the cloud, that you can have a fixed monthly cost without having to budget for maintenance of the phone systems, upgrades to the phone systems, or replacing outdated equipment. That's all taken care of for you in the cloud. You just have the device on your desktop that allows you to make and receive phone calls, and this device can be a traditional looking telephone. It can be a laptop. It can be a smartphone. It can be many different devices. And so this really does the voice connectivity is brought across the transport that is either dedicated to your location, or you can even do this across the public internet. And you can see that would kind of relieve you of any boundaries to where the phone system is, so that you could be working out of the office, you could be working out of a remote location such as your house, even a Starbucks, and you can also be using the mobile devices as well. So if we're looking at making these changes, we would really need to look at what the situation is for each of your organizations. It needs to be engineered to make sure that it's of voice quality, and so there will be bandwidth requirements. We can deliver the voice non-compressed, which is referred to as G.711, and basically that's about 87K per call. We can deliver it compressed, so it doesn't take as much bandwidth, and that's referred to as G.729. That's about 31K per call. The latency, the delay for the packets to get to your location, we need that to be less than 100 milliseconds. If it's over 150, you'll see the voice quality diminish because voice is a real-time application. It's not like surfing the internet where sometimes it just seems slow and that's okay. If your latency is there, then your voice will be choppy, and that's what we're trying to avoid. You also need to make sure that the packet loss doesn't exceed 1%. Again, that could affect the voice quality, which we want to make sure that you have the best voice quality possible when using these solutions. The other things we need to look at would be to make sure that your firewall has a SIP algorithm disabled. QoS, which is quality of service, we should implement it as possible. If you're going across the public internet, we'll have to make sure the voice has priority on the outbound traffic from your location. On the inbound side, we'll have to make sure that we control as much as possible the latency and the packet loss. If it's a dedicated connection and not going over the public internet, then we would have more control of the quality service and be able to prioritize the voice over the internet activity or your data activity in a much more controlled fashion. We'd also need to understand how many concurrent calls that you're going to have. We need to know if this is used for life safety. Mostly our recommendation is to not use it. Life safety would be in regards to using this for elevator phones. You know, the POTS lines that you have today are powered by the central office. So basically, if you have a power outage, if there's any catastrophes that go on at your location, we're still really relying on the central office to power the phone line, which will allow you to make and receive phone calls in disaster situations. We would have to make sure that we look at what the power requirements are, because there is that black box on your location that we would need to make sure that that has a power backup in case of outages along the same lines of your phone system. If your phone system has 30 minutes of backup, we would make sure that you have the 30 minutes of backup. You should hook up that black box to the UPS or your generator that you have for the other facilities. Also, if you're doing voice over internet or you're doing packetized voice, you should not be using these lines for faxing. Faxing really needs to have, at this point, POTS lines, traditional POTS lines, because if there's any loss of data packets, a fax machine doesn't ask just to send those packets back. It has to retransmit the entire fax. So you probably will be okay with 1 to 2 pages of fax. You probably have intermittent issues, but definitely if you're doing 2, 3, 4 pages of fax, and if it's missing data, it's going to want to try and keep transmitting and retransmitting to try and get all the information across. And if there's packet loss that's in there, it's just going to not be a good connection and it's not going to work well. So those are just a couple things. Not to give too much detail, but those are the types of things that we would work with you in regards to making sure that it's engineered correctly so that you're satisfied with these solutions. Really, that's a quick overview in regards to some of these legacy services and why there's an increase going on. I ran a couple minutes over the 15, but I apologize. My contact information is on here. Feel free to contact me with any questions. Would be happy to assist you. Again, thanks for your time. Have a good day.